Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on the Sitcom Showdown. Hello and welcome back to Sitcom Showdown for 2019. Happy New Year. This Jeff is here. And hi Steve.
Hi Jeff. Yes, first one for the new year.
Yes. So here we are for episode 44, Steve, and it's my turn. So we're doing a sitcom this time around called House of Fools. So the episode is from series 1. It's episode 3 and it's called The Probation Affair. Oh, first though, the network, it was, it's a UK show. It was on BBC Two and they did 2 series, one in 2014, one in 2015.
Wow.
And in between that, there was a Christmas special. And then it got unceremoniously cancelled for no good reason as far as I can see, or that anyone else could see, but the BBC might have had other cash priorities, who knows.
Yeah. Are there calls to bring it back?
If there are, I haven't heard about them, because the people who are in it are always doing other projects anyway.
They've moved on.
They've probably moved on, yeah, I'd say so. Most of this show is set in the flat of a chap named Bob. He's one half of Vic and Bob duo. Are you familiar with Vic and Bob, Steve?
Well, I've heard of them.
Yeah, oh good. Right, well we'll hear more about them in a second. Anyway, yes, so it's set in the House of Fools. So anyway, Bob's got these people living with him that he doesn't necessarily want living with him, and he's got insane next door neighbours on either side. So his best friend Vic lives with him, and Vic and Bob are playing themselves here, right? So they're Vic and Bob in the show. And Bob's Nordic adult son Eric lives with him as well, and he's played by a Norwegian young hotshot comedian, stand-up comedian guy. And so on one side, his next door neighbour is Julie, who's completely barking mad,
right? And
she's a writer. And then on the other side is Beef, and Beef is equally bonkers, and he's sort of a bit of a Lothario. Then Vic's brother Bosh,
right,
gets released from prison. And then he comes to live with them as well. So it's got the 6 main cast members, so I'm not going to spend a hell of a lot of time running through them all.
Can I just ask a question? How did he come to have a Norwegian son?
Because he had a dalliance with a Norwegian lady who was like a trawler captain type chick.
Right.
Yeah. It probably won't all fall into place until I tell you who's playing who.
Okay.
So Vic and Bob play themselves. There's a bit of a spiel on them, but Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, they've had a bunch of their own surreal, absurd slapstick TV sketch shows in the 90s, and they were very successful. In fact, in a 2005 poll by the Comedian's Comedian, they were voted 9th greatest comedy act ever. But,
Right.
But let's just take that as they're great. Wikipedia says they were the alternative to alternative comedy.
What does that mean?
I guess it means if,
they weren't alternative?
The old comedy is, as they do in Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, is like, Tarby and all those sorts of old comedians, and then alternative comedy came along and blew them all away. Then Vic and Bob were doing something else.
Okay.
I don't know, that's my theory. I haven't looked into it. I haven't seen a hell of a lot of Vic and Bob, I've got to say. Anyhow, so they had The Smell of Reeves and Mortimer in 93 and 95, and on those shows, lots of Fast Show people, and we all know everyone from the Fast Show.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, Paul Whitehouse and Charlie Higson and all those people. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to Bosh, who's sort of the centre of this episode, and he's a friend of yours. It's Dan Skinner from Yonderland.
All right.
Ah!
Oh, I remember you telling me about this now.
Yeah. I thought it might all come back. Sitcom-wise, Dan Skinner's been in Yonderland, not starred in other sitcoms that I can remember. Can you remember any others he might have been in? No, fair enough. But he's been in tons of sketch shows. He was in Armstrong and Miller and Tracy Ullman and the Vic and Bob stuff, and he had a famous character called, I'm going to need to read this carefully, Angelos Epithemiou. He won for that character Best Comedy Breakthrough Artist at the British Comedy Awards in 2011, and as that character got his own show on Channel 4 in 2012. It's a strange turnaround with Bosh, because he starts out as this barely able to string a sentence together ex-inmate, and then by the end of season 2 he's the king of camp, who's just a completely different character. But that's neither here nor there. So Beef, the crazy next door neighbour Lothario, is played by Matt Berry. It's one of his
I can see him playing
Lothario.
Lothario?
Totally. And he really is in this one. He's Captain Sleazy. And he's always got tons of great stories about things he's done. Matt Berry. Look, I'm not going to go on about Matt Berry except to say that everybody knows Matt Berry. Can you name some other sitcoms he's been in, Steve?
Garth Marenghi's Dark Place.
For sure,
Of
that's
course,
one.
that's at the top of my list.
Yep.
IT Crowd.
Yep.
Toast of London.
Yep, you're knocking it out of the park here, dude. There's also The Mighty Bosh and Snuffbox. And, he's been in tons of other things. So let's move on from Matt Berry and Beef, and we'll move on to Julie, the next-door neighbour. And that's played by Morgana Robinson, who also is a very interesting person in her own right. But as far as comedy goes, she was born in Australia, so we'll take credit for her, even though she hasn't been here since she was 3.
Beauty.
She had her own show in 2010 called The Morgana Show, and on Channel 4, and then she'd star in all the sketches. Then she headed up another sketch show called Very Important People in 2012. So she was in Toast of London with Matt Berry. Are you aware of the show The Windsors?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's got Harry Enfield in it and blah, blah, blah. She's in that. And she's been in David Walliams' show and in Charlie Brooker's Weekly Wipe and all these things. Lastly, Eric, who is Bob's son in the show. That's Norwegian stand-up comedian Daniel Simonsen. And he is a bit of a newcomer. He won Best Newcomer at the 2012 Edinburgh Fringe. And I watched some of his stand-up, and it's pretty good. I didn't mind it at all. And he's just a great character in this show, so that's pretty cool. So it's got a very interesting cast.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. There's a lot of actors in there who have done a lot, so...
Yeah.
Prominent, I would say.
Yep. So as far as background to watching goes, it's all very simple. I started watching it when it first came out. And you haven't watched it.
No.
So there you go. Although you will now.
We shall.
Yes, let's zip off and do that.
I like your new wallpaper. That's German honeymoon horses, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently.
Billy Bongo there. Some of them galloping.
Some of them not so galloping, see, he's not ignorant.
So, Bosh, you moving out today?
No, why would I, you twat?
Oh, well, firstly, because it's not your house, and also, I've never actually invited you to live here, have I?
So, Bosh, what's with the fancy club at top half anyway, like?
Well, I've got my probation officer coming round to check on us, like. Now, I've told her that I've got a steady job and that Julie next door is my fiancée. Oh, yes, and I've also told her that I own this place.
Hey, no way, never, not going to happen, nowhere. This is not Barnacle country.
And if I was you, Bosh, I'd put some trousers on. Your probation officer might not be as free-thinking as me, you know what I mean, like?
Bosh, some trousers on.
Bosh makes tentative step towards trouser collection.
Well done, Bosh, well done.
Okay, we're back after watching that. It is a roller coaster ride, especially the second half. Okay, so I've got the synopsis, Steve, so should I just launch into that?
Launch away.
All right, it's a bit of a big one because there's a lot of action. And towards the end, I got a bit sick of writing stuff down and went into real summary mode. But anyway, as always, the show opens with the sort of perky imitation 60s sitcom music.
I thought that was great.
Theme tune, yeah.
And it had the thing where people's faces are inside of circles and the name goes around the top of the circle and all that.
Yeah, it's very classic British sitcom, isn't it? And then, as usual, the show starts with one of the characters, either Vic or Bob usually, or in this case both, singing a song to set up the situation, which in this case is Vic, who's been decorating as a surprise for Bob, and he's been putting up new wallpaper and some curtains to sort of separate the lounge area from the kitchen area. And they feature a pattern of horses on a white background.
Yes.
It looks like it's mismatched, but it's not because the horses are a bit odd. What's wrong with the horses, Steve?
Well, some are elongated.
Yeah.
Like sausage horses, and some are truncated.
Yeah, with only one set of legs.
And called Billy Bongo.
Yes, the horse with two legs is Billy Bongo, who won the Grand National in 1927 and 1974.
Yes. Surely this isn't the wallpaper. This is the way the wallpaper's been applied to the wall. Some are overlapping, some bits are overlapping and other bits are...
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But then when you look at it again, that's actually the wallpaper, which they probably created on Photoshop and got printed out. So Bob's not happy with this wallpaper. And after a bit of banter between Vic and Bob and a few gags, Bosh comes downstairs, the star of this episode, and his top half is in a tuxedo shirt with a bow tie and a monocle, and he's holding a posh hat, which isn't quite a top hat, but
No.
it's similar style.
And he's got an imitation fob watch or something like that
Yeah.
as well.
Exactly. And it's all that's tucked into his Y fronts, which is all he's wearing on his lower half, except for some black socks and nicely polished shoes.
Yes.
So on his way downstairs, Bosh sings his own intro song, revealing that he's all dressed up because his probation officer, a nice lady, is going to be visiting today. And as soon as Bosh makes it down the stairs, he immediately compliments the wallpaper.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, look, there's Billy Bongo and, there's some horses, some of
Yes.
them galloping.
Some of them not galloping.
Yeah, some of them not so galloping.
Yes, not so galloping.
Which Bob says this wallpaper is ridiculous. But as we'll find out, every person who enters the house from then on in goes, oh, I like the wallpaper. Some of them galloping, some of them not so galloping.
German honeymoon horses.
The German honeymoon horses. Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means that the elongated ones are big enough to fit 2 people on. And so they're German honeymoon horses. So they've bred them so that they're extra long so 2 people can fit on them.
Oh.
So they're...
Those crafty Germans.
Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway, Bosh immediately spots Billy Bongo and the German honeymoon horses, and that sort of helps Vic's case in the wallpaper walls. Anyhow, this is where we discover the real plot, that Bosh has told his probation officer that not only has he got a job, but he owns the house and that he's got a fiancée. And before anyone can argue, Vic and Bob tell Bosh, listen, dude, you reek. You stink of booze and flies, and you've forgotten your trousers. And Bosh, as usual, isn't too fussed by this, but Vic sprays some stuff into Bosh's mouth in an attempt to freshen Bosh's breath, and then all this tons of foam starts shooting out of Bosh's mouth, and Bosh drops to his knees, and there's this huge mound of foam, and then a cheeky chicken comes out of it and goes off around the flat. That was the point at which you just went, hang on a sec.
Yeah.
This is too weird, man.
Yep.
What's this show doing to us? But, as you'll find out, it is a crazy show where anything can
We were
happen.
just getting started.
Oh, yeah. So Cheeky Chicken zooms off to somewhere else in the flat, and Bosh sort of recovers, and then he goes back upstairs to get some trousers. They're not very impressive trousers, but I'll talk about those in a moment. But now that Bosh has gone back upstairs...
Return to the subject of the trousers shortly.
Yeah, we will. So, Vic and Bob are alone now, back in the flat. And Vic says,
they're not alone.
No, I mean, they're alone in the living room.
They're by
sorry.
themselves.
Yes, they're by themselves in the living room. You're quite right. Well spotted. And then Vic points out some more features of the wallpaper to win Bob over.
What were those
Which
features?
were, I've put this one up with fly spray and hair gel so it'll get rid of all the wasps. And Bob says, we don't have any wasps. He goes, well, you will now, because this roll went up with marmalade.
Yes.
And it's a bit
It's
uneven because
it's a bit lumpy, that one.
it's chunky cut marmalade. Oh, man. Anyway, and they go into the you're an idiot routine. So the door bursts open, though, and Beef strides in, Matt Berry, and he's singing his theme tune, Want to Make Love Tonight.
Yeah.
And Beef's obviously so important, he doesn't sing the standard intro tune that everyone else gets. He gets to sing his own one.
Yep. Which Matt Berry probably improvised in about 30 seconds flat.
You can bet he did.
Have you got his attire down? In your
Yes,
notes
I
then?
have.
Okay.
Oh, look, here we go. Yeah, right. So he immediately loves the horse wallpaper. And so Beef's wearing this one-piece denim jumpsuit with a big zip up the front and a massive bright yellow belt.
Yes.
And he describes it as the most yellow of all my yellow belts. And he says it's
Quite.
really handy for using it to test whether people like yellow belts. He invites Bob over to give it a close inspection because Bob's all like, oh, Beef, I love your yellow belt. So he goes, well, come closer. Or closer still. Anyway, he gets Bob to have a deep inspection of the yellow belt. So Bob's down on his knees taking a really good look at this. And then he tells Vic to come over so that Vic can see whether Bob likes yellow belts.
Yes.
Anyway, it's all very innocent, right? But as this is happening, Eric is coming downstairs. And unfortunately for Eric, the point of view he's seeing this from, it looks a little bit dodgy because you've got Vic and Bob on their knees in front of Beef. And they're checking out his yellow belt, but he can't see that. And he just goes into his trademark. And then he stands around facing the front, waiting for his next line, completely motionless. That's part of his shtick, though. So it's decided that Bob does like yellow belts, and then there's a spot of violence. But then Eric immediately spots the wallpaper, and he's complimenting the German honeymoon horses. And so Eric obviously doesn't like his dad, Bob, very much, but he hero worships Vic. And so he goes, he's complimenting Vic on how inventive and crazy he is and these sorts of things. Anyway, Eric goes back upstairs. I was going to launch into a bit more stuff there, but...
Well, Vic says, let's catch up for a Ribena later.
At dusk.
At dusk.
He goes, oh, you're crazy.
Yeah,
Vic."
you're crazy.
Anyway, he goes back upstairs, and so now we've just got Beef, Bob, and Vic in the living room, and they're chatting, and it turns out Beef has come around to talk to Bosh about some dodgy gear that Beef's storing for Bosh. And this adds to the plot. It comes in handy later on. And then they do the Bosh routine calling upstairs, which they also do in other episodes. And so, yeah, I won't go into all of that, but it does involve about a minute of them just saying, Bosh, up the stairs. But he can't be roused. No Bosh appears. So Beef just leaves. After asking if there's any women in the flat that perhaps he can seduce. Anyway, as soon as Beef leaves, Bosh does in fact come down the stairs with trousers on, but they're these baggy, elasticated stonewash that are 2 sizes too small and barely cover him. Yep. So he's more or less just there in his undies and tuxedo. Have you got a comment on that?
Well, it doesn't complete the look that he started, does it?
Absolutely not. Maybe he wasn't able to steal the tuxedo trousers. Maybe not. Right, so Bosh tells Vic and Bob that the probation officer is going to be here any second now. So one of them has to pretend to go and be his boss, and the other needs to go next door very quickly and tell Julie to pretend to be Bosh's fiancée. So he says, right, you two, get out of here, but it's too late because she's rung the doorbell, and then he's letting her in, just as Vic and Bob are making their way through the German honeymoon horse curtains into the kitchen, but they're trapped there now because they can't get to the front door to go and do their job, so they have to try and open the window. So there's two things happening at once here, which is that Bosh is trying to charm the nice lady probation officer, and all his attempts at charm are a bit low class and clumsy, to say the least.
That's a bit of an understatement, really.
So, this is your new home. I like your German honeymoon horses. Some of them galloping.
Some of them not so galloping. But where have my manners have abandoned me? Please, sit yourself down there, my sweet, sweet darling. Now, can I get you a lager, a cigarette, or perhaps a chicken nugget?
Thank you, I'm fine.
And meanwhile, next door in the kitchen, Vic and Bob are desperately trying to get out the window. And it all goes hideously wrong because after being helped up onto the sink, because the window's above the sink, Vic treads on all the crockery and creates a lot of noise, which would rumble the plan.
Yes.
Anyway, their attempts to get out of the window are a bit chaotic, shall we say.
Can I just say at this point that chicken does feature rather prominently in this episode? Was it?
It does.
Co-sponsored by the
chicken board.
The Chicken Growers Association of the UK or something.
It might well have been.
What's the chicken that's scooting around all over the place? Cheeky chicken?
Yeah, they just call it cheeky chicken.
We've got chicken nuggets and...
and then later on...
jump too far ahead.
Let's not spoil it. Oh, no, I've jumped ahead.
Trying to be quiet, they make loads and loads of racket.
Yep.
And then Bob has to go to take the fuse out, which will stop the blender from blending, because that's the noisiest thing of several noisy things that are going on simultaneously.
No,
so he hops into a cupboard and then gets transported through some kind of a video game scenario.
Yep.
To the fuse box, and meanwhile
Vic's still trying to get out the window.
He does get out the window, doesn't
with
he?
With a bit of help from Bosh.
And then after all that happens, they both almost simultaneously burst through the front door, both
pretending to be the
boss.
Yeah. All right, I'll backtrack a little bit because I'm not sure if I mentioned the blackmail or not, because obviously Bob doesn't even want Bosh living there. And
I was wondering this.
Yeah, okay. So
why does he go to such lengths to get him through this probation?
Yeah.
When he doesn't want him there in the first place.
That's right. Okay, so then what happens is Bob says, I'm not taking any part of this, bugger you. I'm not saying that you own this house and that I'm your boss and helping you. And so then Bosh pulls out these blackmail photos of Bob in some sort of dalliance with John McCririck, who we had to look up. And he's an old racing commentator and not a very glamorous man. And he says that he's going to sell these saucy photos of Bob and John McCririck to the national press unless Bob helps him out. So that means Bob's got to help Bosh do whatever needs to be done.
Now that's straight out of Filthy Rich and Cat Flap.
It is totally out of Filthy Rich and Cat. I hadn't thought about that until now.
Yeah, he would be using it.
And the other thing is Bob's clearly guilty. And it was Vic who gave Bosh the pics in prison to cheer him up and the negatives. Anyway, so they've got no choice but to go along with Bosh's plan. And as we know, the probation officers arrived. Vic and Bob, after a bit of noise-making, have managed to, they're shouting shh at each other and then hitting each other with tambourines and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, all in an effort to be quiet.
Meanwhile, Bosh is desperately scrambling to explain all of this noise to the probation officer, saying it's his maid. Even though on his own he was already doing a completely crap job of acting polite and posh, and he would have ruined the plan on his own anyway. But in a last-ditch attempt, Bosh tells the probation officer, look, my boss is going to be here in a minute, and my fiancée is coming around to visit. She goes, well, what is this new job you've got? He goes, oh, I don't know, but my boss is going to tell you all about it. So the plan is a crap plan. He hasn't thought it through anyway.
It's pretty crap.
Yeah, so Vic is over at Julie's house, right, after getting through the window with a broom up his backside, which we didn't explain. Anyway, he's convincing her to pop over to the flat and pretend to be Bosh's fiancée, and Julie instantly agrees, because Julie loves playing roles, and she does, any chance she gets to play a character or dress up or do whatever, she's always on for it, so that's fine. She loves that sort of stuff. Bob, who has escaped the fuse box and the conduit tunnel that he had to go down, bursts in, and he's pretending to be Bosh's boss. And like literally 4 seconds after that, Vic has also come in pretending to be the boss, so now there's two bosses.
Oh, I thought it was Count Arthur Strong that came through the door.
It was a little bit Count Arthur Strong, Ian, wasn't it? I hadn't spotted that.
Yeah, the glasses, the hat, and the mo.
Yeah. The situation is getting worse here, because there's now two bosses, and the probation officer says, and which one of these men is your boss? And he goes, I don't know, which one do you like?
Yeah, and the bosses are contradicting each other.
Yeah. But then they quickly improvise a way to make it that they work together, and they're off to have a high-powered business meeting in the kitchen.
Yes.
And the other thing is they're being like these 1950s stereotypes of bosses, aren't they? They're not being real bosses. And then speaking of the 1950s stereotypes, Vic and Bob have gone off into the kitchen, have their high-powered business meeting. Bosh is left scrambling to explain various things to the probation officer. Julie rolls in. And she's obviously spent the last 5 minutes writing this whole character that she's going to play to be Bosh's fiancée.
Yep.
And she's got this brilliant common accent, and she's being a secretary of some sort. Hello, darling, I've just come back from the typing pool. God blimey, those Olivetti's don't half blister your fingers.
Yeah.
And Bosh...
Genius.
But just before this, though, Bosh had been explaining that his fiancée is Persian.
Turkish or something.
And works for... a man in Istanbul, or she says Istanbul, and he goes, yeah, that's him, Istanbul.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, you're the Persian fiancé, are you? And on a dime,
yeah, she
Julie
switches.
just go, yes, I'm Fatima, let me tell you.
I tell you a fortune.
Oh, and when you think things can't get any worse. And then Beef comes barreling into the house, and he's saying, virtually more or less, hey, Bosh, your stolen stuff's outside, and ooh, who's this very attractive lady, and oh, perhaps we should make love, and completely ruining the whole thing. And then he says, hi, Julie, rumbling the fact that Fatima is Julie. And then
maybe,
says,
Bosh, you should get a girlfriend.
And a job. Yes. Maybe even somewhere to live.
Yep.
And he ruins the plan. How much of the plan
the
does
whole
he ruin?
plan.
He ruins the whole plan.
The whole plan?
What whole plan?
Yes, what whole plan?
And then Bosh, naturally enough, smacks Beef in the face, and then, because they're all standing in a semicircle, then, he passes that down the line to Bob, who then whacks Vic, who then whacks Julie, who then kicks Bosh in the face. Yep. And Bosh is doing some groovy dancing. Then he goes, no, stop. We've got to sort this out. Yeah, drop the bait.
That was classic.
It was brilliant. Dan Skinner.
I just can't get my head around how different he is in this show.
To Yonderland.
Unbelievable.
What a range.
From mad person to...
Very sensible person.
Very unmad person.
Where are we, Steve? I'm getting lost again.
Okay, drop the beat. I've got Ramsey's Kitchen Nightmares written down, so we must go to...
Okay, good.
The backup plan. Yeah,
they do. So what they do is they tell Bosh, listen, buddy, you can't fake your way through this. You haven't got any choice. You've got to get a real job. And sort of Bob takes him aside and puts his arm around him and says, Bosh, what do you really like to do? And Bosh visualises throwing a brick through a window. He goes, well, I can't do that for a job. And he goes, hang on, I'm going to be like that guy off the telly, Gordon Ramsay. And then Bob says, that gives me an idea for a plan. To which Beef replies, what plan? What whole plan? And he's seeding that gag for later on. So needless to say, the plan is that Bosh is going to open up a pop-up restaurant in the house, which he then, not even worrying about copyright, just calls Ramsey's Kitchen Nightmares. He's completely ripped it off altogether. And just the way, because we've cut to the restaurant and people are being served, and the first thing we see is Julie doing some waitressing, which is just one of the most bizarre scenes I've ever seen in my life. And she's coming through, she's holding just a crappy bit of newspaper with 2 cold, fully cooked chickens on there. She goes, here's your starters, 1 chicken for you, 1 chicken for you. Okay, let's say grace. She proceeds to do some sort of football song, getting right up in their grill, right up in their faces, and then she sings it and she goes, oh, that's it.
And she brought the chickens out on a folded up sheet of newspaper.
Yeah. And she just uses her hands to plonk one on the plate. And that's the starters. And when you consider the only thing on the menu is milk, yogurt, or chicken, what's the mains?
Well, chicken, presumably.
I've gotten lost again here. But yes, after that little Julie scene, which I thought was great, the probation officer arrives and he says, hello, welcome to my new pop-up restaurant, Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, off of Gordon Ramsay's, and takes her to her seat. And how would you like your chicken?
How would you like your chicken cooked? Roasted or boiled?
Sorry, I'm a vegetarian.
Well, have it cold then.
No, I'm a vegetarian.
Well, have it cold then.
I don't want chicken. Have you got anything else?
I've got halibut upstairs in the bath.
I'm a vegetarian.
Well, have it raw then.
What else have you got?
Fags, milk and yoghurt.
So this is taking a while, right? And I'm going to quickly summarise now. So this whole restaurant section is the final third of the episode. It's totally chaotic. It's completely mad, and it is bloody fantastic. But it'd take another half hour just to describe everything and point out all the jokes. So the menu's limited to whole roast chickens, yogurt or cigarettes. The probation officer's vegetarian. And if he can't feed her really quickly, he's going to go back to prison. Poor old Bosh. And meanwhile, he's having to delay everything and entertain her at the same time, while Vic and Bob, who are the chefs, they have to create a vegetarian meal in super fast time with no ingredients whatsoever apart from chickens. And so they phone Beef to see what ingredients he can rush around with, and while that's happening, Bob runs upstairs to see if Eric's got anything in his room, and here we get the serve this gag, which I really like, but we'll talk about the serve this gag later.
Yes.
They come back downstairs. Beef has arrived to the rescue, and he's brought...
Oh, yes, he's really come through.
some flour and some sauce. Needless to say, it turns out to be grout and nerve agent, which Vic and Bob have tasted with Beef, and they all start hallucinating and presumably dying. Beef staggers into the dining area, and he tries to get off with the lovely lady probation officer again, and Bosh has to quickly throw him out. Meanwhile, Vic and Bob are having complete hallucination freakouts. The cheeky chicken, which came out of Bosh at the beginning of the episode, has attacked Vic and Bob. But the nerve agent wears off. They're able to serve the probation officer. I'm not going to tell you how they got a coconut, but a nice pizza with coconut on top.
You just said something about the cheeky chicken coming out of Bosh.
Yeah, at the beginning of the episode.
What do you mean it comes out of Bosh?
It does. The cheeky chicken comes out of Bosh. Remember when he was foaming at the mouth?
Right.
And then
that's not where the cheeky chicken came from.
Yeah, it is. It came out of Bosh.
Is that the first appearance of the cheeky chicken?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
I just jumped to the conclusion that it was a staple
standards.
that had been...
You never see cheeky chicken again.
What?
He's this episode only. And we missed out the bit where he goes flying out the window and he goes walking past the window. Yeah. It's hard to describe that on an audio podcast.
It's cheeky chicken. Bopping along to the window music.
Oh, man. It's classic. Anyway, I'm trying to rush through this here. So this coconut pizza they served up, made of grout and nerve agent and coconut. And she's so impressed by how nice this pizza looks and how much effort they've clearly all gone to that she fancies Beef as well, so that doesn't hurt. So
she's clearly mad. As mad as them.
Because of the effort and the pizza, she's decided to give Bosh a good report. Bosh isn't going back to prison, and it's all a big happy ending. And at this point, Beef comes back in with cannons for shoes, fires a cannonball onto one of her plates and saying he loves her, and then the cast sing the closing song and do a dance, and everything's sorted out. Completely hat stand, isn't it?
It's hat stand to the power of hat stand.
Oh, man. I'm exhausted after all of that. Yeah, times infinity. I don't even know what to say after all of that, Steve, so perhaps...
I'd take my socks off halfway through.
Well, as long as that made you feel better. That's the main thing.
I was getting very hot.
Yeah. So I've done too much speaking, Steve. What have you got in your notes there?
There's a gag when Bob goes upstairs to visit Eric to see if he's got any comestibles that he can cook up.
Yep.
And he asks Eric if he's got anything he can serve up. Yeah. And Eric hands him a tennis ball. Yeah.
For sure.
Hands him a tennis ball.
There.
You can serve that up.
Serve this.
He goes, it's a classic. And that reminded me so much of last episode where Miranda's at Ray's post office window and she says, oh, he's got a lovely package. Come on, Ray. That's a classic. So we're on a roll of sitcoms where they come out with a classic
gag. They deliver
and
these screamer gags.
Yeah, and then they have to emphasise it by saying, it's a classic. Now, and also, you forgot to mention that Matt Berry comes back to, or Beef comes back to the my whole plan thing at the end, which ties it up all neatly.
He does, yeah. That's right, because I
can't remember exactly how he does it, but he does it.
Yeah, he says, tonight I celebrate my love for you. And she says, are you trying to knock me up or something? Which is a reference to saying, can you get the chef to knock me up something? Mm-hmm. And after she says, are you trying to knock me up or something? He goes, that was my plan. My whole plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boom. The other thing I had in my notes was Daft John's sucking coconut.
Yes.
So let me see if I can get this right.
Okay.
So they're talking about whether there's something to cook, and Vic mentions the fact that he's got a coconut which he was going to take to his horse.
Yes and no, but yeah.
Well,
so what happens
Vic's
is
got a horse
Vic's dying.
Right.
And he goes out to Bosh and he goes, we've all eaten nerve agent. I'm dying. I want you to have my racehorse. And Bosh says, what, Daft John? And he goes, yeah, he's turning 50 next week. I've kept a coconut in the fridge for him. He loves to suck on him. And you can take it from here.
Well, I can't remember. Someone must come out with a line about not Daft John sucking coconut. But I thought that was classic, so I wrote it down.
Not Daft John sucking coconut. Yeah. I don't care about his sucking coconut.
Followed it up with another gag.
Yeah. Well, it was good.
It was one of those things that you go, that's really funny.
Why was it?
But it just like went past you so quickly.
What else you got?
That's it.
So there's recurring gags in here, and you've spotted some of them. So there's the whole plan gag, which they get mileage out of.
Yep.
And obviously the German honeymoon horses, which they get mileage out of. And then there's that when people walk past, I've called it the strut. When people walk past the window, they play this jaunty music, and they bob their heads back and forth. And then...
like a chicken.
Yeah. So you see Vic do it at one stage, then you see Bob do it at one stage, and then there's a good 10 minutes goes by, and then you see Cheeky Chicken do it, and it's just hilarious when Cheeky Chicken does it. So Bosh is the star of this episode, which I've said before, Steve. There's the chicken nugget joke, then there's the recorder joke where he's doing some
my goodness,
entertainment in the restaurant while they're waiting for this vegetarian meal, and he plays a few bars of some recorder song very badly, and then just goes, etc.
Yes, it's Three Blind Mice, isn't it?
Oh, a really bad version. Yeah,
yes.
I think you could be right. And he's putting all this special effort into impressing his probation officer, and he wants to warm her seat, but he's got a pair of steaming underpants on there.
Yeah, that was one that went past me because I was probably writing Daft John sucking coconut down at the time.
And he lifts this horrible stained pair of underpants off her chair. I have warmed your seat for you. And I noticed that...
does he whisk it off in a...
in a waiterly manner?
Yes, a waiterly manner.
Well, what's funny about that as well is that there's steam coming off these underpants, and it wasn't steam that they had there. They had to hire CGI people to digitally add the steam afterwards.
What?
So who's making those decisions? Vic, this underpant gag's not working real good for me. Can we hire some CGI guys to put some digital steam off the Grundies? Anyway.
Does the budget stretch to underpants steam?
Underpants steam. That's probably... they went over budget there. And when the probation officer's first interviewing Bosh, he goes, so how have things been for you while you've been on release, Mr. And Bosh goes, Bosh. She goes, oh, not Bush. And he goes, not Bush city limits, whatever you like. That's a cheesy one. I liked it though. Oh, and did you notice that when Vic and Bob are in the kitchen being chefs for the restaurant, what they had on their heads?
Well, some kind of funny hats.
Yeah, you'd think they had chef's hats. They aren't chef's hats. They're just crappy plastic bleach bottles that they've cut a hole in the bottom and shoved on their heads, and they say bleach on them.
Yep.
And then Bob's wig is sitting on top of his hat, a foot above his head. And
I didn't notice that.
These are little details that you pick up later on. Yeah, there's plenty more gags, but we've taken up so much time with the synopsis and things that I don't have the energy to keep going. Should I launch into my why it should go in, or do you have some closing comments?
No.
Oh,
I'm
very
all
good.
out of comments.
Right, so basically for me, it's just an example of 100% crazy fun, right? So there's, well, in other sitcoms you can have conflict, interpersonal conflict, but the conflict here is totally cartoony, and you can always not equate it with your real life in any way whatsoever. There's no lessons, there's no morals, there's no romantic tension or politics. It's just 100% comic relief, and that's why I like it. And I think pure comic relief is very precious these days, and I really like how everything and anything can happen. It's really free and easy and unpredictable, but it's not dark like Toast of London or The Mighty Boosh could be dark, or Merengue as well. This one's sort of the same surreal zaniness, but it's much lighter and brighter, and it has got a really good cast. And the good thing is with this sort of thing is if you miss an episode, you can pick right up where you left off, because there's no overall arc things. I know we mentioned some arc things, but they're not important. You don't need them. And I think it's, as a sitcom, it's a throwback. And while it's taking the mickey out of all those 60s and 70s sitcoms, it still benefits from all those conventions. And so, yeah, I just think it's good, brainless fun that you can get a nice laugh out of.
This was pretty young ones-ish in places.
It was a bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking specifically of spraying the fly spray into Bosh's mouth, and then all these bubbles come out of his mouth, and then Cheeky Chicken comes out of that and runs off. They go Cheeky Chicken.
Yeah.
Yes, what do you want me to say something now?
Yeah, oh, well, no, I mean, should it go into the Hall of Fame, Steve, if you have no final comments?
Well, I was a bit worried at the start because, you know, I generally like tightly written plots and things to make lots of sense, and have previously knocked back things like Basil Brush.
Because it's just
because it's
completely...
Well, I think that one, it kind of broke its own... I felt like it broke its own rules, but I don't know. This one I felt completely fine with that, with the craziness, and I couldn't really find any dud gags in it.
Oh.
Yeah, it just made me laugh. But, yeah, I wouldn't mind watching some more of that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so yes, we can put it in.
All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm very pleased about that.
First one through for 2019.
Yes. So in the absence of having any more time to sit around and discuss stuff, we'll have to zip off. It's your turn next time.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everyone. So we'll sign off now, Jeff, and catch everyone in about a fortnight.
Bye.
Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.